Hello and welcome to another edition of Somerset Highlander. This is the second part of the garden transformation and build. So this is the blank canvas that we were working from, and we were also working with the garden designs to try and implement all the changes. Even with a relatively small garden, there was an awful lot of topsoil to be removed, so we needed to get in some miniature diggers. And the biggest area they had to clear were the steps. They had to dig out quite a lot of soil there. At the back you can start to see the retaining wall for the beds being created, and a lot of the topsoil that was dug out was transferred to create the flower beds. Here you can see the new courtyard layout being mapped out on the ground, and then the raised beds and new water feature being created. The biggest transformation was going to be the wildlife pond, and you can start to see them digging out the space where the pond was going to take effect, and then you will see them adding in the liner and starting to fill it. It obviously looks considerably larger in its initial conception compared to what it looks like at the end, as they would trim back the liner once it was filled. Here you can see the new beds being created for the wildflower meadows. There are two different types. The one by the pond is more grass rich, whereas the one next to the garage is more of a wildflower pure meadow rather than having any grasses in it. Here you can see the pond now in its final shape, and a lot of the liner has either been cut back or obviously covered over with the materials. You can also see the lighter material on the ground there is what's known as hoggin. It's a clay-based pathway, often used by the National Trust as it is hard wearing and made of natural materials. So as you can see, the turf in this picture has arrived. This is for going around the pond, and it's called Landscape 34. It's produced by a company in Basingstoke called Wildflower Turf. You can find them at wildflowerturf.co.uk. And essentially they create this ecosystem that you can lay down very quickly into any environment you want. The reason we chose this one for the pond is because this is what you would expect to see around a native pond. To the right is a different type of wildflower meadow called native enriched. This is purely flowers rather than having grasses in it, and it has a little bit more colour and interest than the landscape turf, and they use naturalised species as well as native species to create it. So the first round of planting was in November. These are hardier plants that will survive the winter, and November is the best month of the year in the UK to plant new trees. In the courtyard, we plan to have a lot of ferns and white flowers, due in part to the lack of sunlight that gets into this area. The final batch of planting is due in late April 2022, and after that we will continually develop and plant more as we see the garden mature and develop.